What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Monday, April 21st edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 6-game MLB slate tonight starting at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. So if you hadn't actually looked at the start time, make sure you don't miss the start of the slate. It starts 25 minutes earlier than usual. 6-gamer wraps up at 9:45 with the Brewers taking on the Giants in San Francisco. So basically 5 games starting within an hour and a half of each other, and then one late game. Going to go through each of those games game by game. Going to be a more normal show as far as just the game by game breakdown today, as opposed to talking about my lineups, because I don't know exactly what I did, but something got fucked up because I'd have 100% Robbie Ray and 99% Kidder Montero, supposedly. And I don't think that's right. So I don't know what I did wrong, but pretty sure I did something wrong. And I'm not going to bother talking through my player exposures if I would supposedly be jamming 2 pitchers in 150 lineups. So going to just go game by game, talking about what looks good, what doesn't, etc., like most people do on these types of shows anyway. I will be commenting on and using the Run the Sims projections. They are on the screen. If you are not available, if you are not aware, they are now available. You can get them, sign up using the link in the description below. These are the MLB projections we put the Endgame Syndicate team put together over at Run the Sims. Basically just trying to take everything out of Utical's head and put it into a model, put it on paper for everyone, including me, to use. So that is available. Use the link in the description below, and I will be walking through using those throughout the show. Starting with the Reds taking on the Marlins in Miami. Nick Lodolo making the start for the Reds. He was skipped over the weekend. Paternity list, I believe, was the case. So he is getting the start here. He's $8,700, and we redid the way the site looks, and I forgot, so I'm a little slow setting things up the way I wanted. But we have Lodolo taking on Max Meyer here. $7,600 price tag on Meyer, $8,700 on Lodolo. Solid strikeout stuff for both guys. Meyer is getting 24% ownership. Lodolo is getting 24% ownership. Meyer getting 19%. I think those are both reasonable numbers. But, solid matchup for both. You get a park downgrade for the Reds going into Miami as opposed to being in Great American. It's even a park downgrade from where they played their last series in Baltimore, where they put up 24 runs yesterday. Since the start of last season, 21% strikeout percentage for Meyer, 3.99 xFIP. Pretty highly regarded pitching prospect, former first-round pick for Miami. Lodolo, a 23% strikeout percentage, 3.98 xFIP over that time. So 2 solid pitchers in pretty decent matchups here. 4.4 implied run total for the Reds, 4 flat for Miami. Cincinnati against right-handed pitching since the start of last season, 22% K percentage, ranks in the middle of the pack, 97 WRC plus on their active roster. Again, pretty average there. And on the other side against lefties, Miami has the second highest strikeout percentage on their active roster since the start of last year at 25%. 77 WRC plus is god-awful. Obviously, you have to keep in mind, especially when you are talking about numbers against left-handed pitching, if you are using the active roster stat, it can be misleading because it's going to include left-handed hitters that are not going to be in the lineup. Miami only has 1 lefty in there with Jesus Sanchez batting 7th, but still sets up as a nice spot here overall for Lodolo in this park. Reasonable salary at $8,700, and the same goes for Meyer at his $7,600 price tag. Since the start of last year, Meyer has allowed a 218 expected ISO to lefties, 179 to righties, so he will give up some power. Lodolo, on the other hand, 156 expected ISO to righties with a 23% strikeout percentage, and a sub 100 expected ISO to lefties with a 23% strikeout percentage. So as you would expect, a little bit more production allowed to right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters for Lodolo, but very similar strikeout percentage to both sides of the plate. If you are looking for bats in this game, I think the first spot that stands out would be left-handed power against Meyer. Ellie De La Cruz leading the way with 14% ownership in this game. I think he looks good at $5,800 if you can make that price tag work. Obviously, a ton of stolen base upside and power from the left side of the plate. Decent home run projection on him here at 0.18 home runs. A lot of that does have to do with the park killing power, but clearly he can hit it out anywhere, and he does have a pretty nice matchup as far as Meyer allowing power to lefties, and then a huge stolen base projection on De La Cruz as well. The guy just looks to run pretty much anytime he gets on. It raises his floor, it raises his ceiling, makes him one of the best plays on any particular slate. Matt McLain, second highest projection, he is getting 10% ownership. Austin Hayes, 3,900 batting cleanup, getting 12%. They are both right-handed, but they do both have power as well. Hayes is still relatively inexpensive also at 3,900. He just returned from the injured list a week or so ago. He's hit well since coming back, and he is somebody that I think is interesting just in general in DFS when he is at what is still a pretty cheap price tag, because we don't really know what he is at this point. Like, if you go back to his time with the Orioles, when he was healthy, he was a very productive player, but he just dealt with a lot of injuries. He was banged up a lot. And the result of that was not only did he miss a lot of games, but he also played in a lot of games at less than 100%. And so he's somebody where it can be a little bit misleading if you just look at, his stats over the last couple of years and say, this is what he is as a player, because there's actually a pretty big gap, I think, in his case specifically, between what he is when he is fully healthy, as he appears to be right now, and what he is when he's playing at, 60%, like he was for a lot of his time with the Orioles. So that is something to keep in mind as well. He is, I think, pretty likely to just be a better player when healthy than projection systems and everything are going to give him credit for. At the very least, I think he has more upside than maybe people would think, because he basically, I think it was last season, might have been the season before, he played like half of a season hurt/sick. Like, it was a really messy situation for him in Baltimore for a period of time that just kind of dragged his numbers down. So I do think he is better than his projections in general indicate, and I do think at 3,900 he has a pretty nice ceiling. TJ Friedl, Gavin Lux from the left side both look pretty good here as well. Pretty much like 5 to 10% ownership coming to most of this game, with the exception of a little bit more to De La Cruz, Hayes, and McLain. Spencer Steer from the right side, only 3,200 with MPE, so he is a way that you can afford some more expensive pitching. Obviously, if you're going to Cincinnati stacks, you can get to him for cheap, batting 6th. He's not somebody that would necessarily stand out as far as the matchup goes against Meyer, but he does have a little bit of stolen base upside. He does have some power, and most importantly, he is just really cheap with MPE. Devin Scott said Meyer has improved his slider a ton this year, and the Reds really struggle against that pitch. Marlins got a really bad bullpen behind Meyer, though. So glad you pointed that out. That is one thing that I do really like about our projections, is that they do factor in, they are going to be quick to catch changes in terms of increased strikeout upside based on changes in pitches or improvement in pitches. We do use all of the data available to us to model that and be quick to adjust to pitching. That's something that I'm really happy with, really excited about. I think it's one of the spots in the industry that is like the most open to exploit, because especially with all of the technology available in baseball now, pitchers are changing stuff start to start, month to month. It's not as simple as saying like, oh, this guy, last season did this, and then he waited to the offseason and made changes. Pitchers aren't waiting, and making changes in the offseason and then coming back with minor adjustments. They are constantly tinkering with stuff and constantly adding, subtracting. And so we are going to be quick, just based on how we put our stuff together, to adjust to things like that. And you can see a pretty solid projection on Meyer here, actually projected slightly higher than Lodolo, even though Lodolo has the better matchup. But I think both pitchers look fine. I think both offenses look fine. To me, the priority is the two pitchers, and then Elly De La Cruz really stands out, followed, I think, by Hayes, McLain, and then the rest of the Reds. I would say Miami behind the Reds. Not as good an offense, not as much upside there. Lodolo, a little bit longer track record of being a good pitcher. He has allowed less power in the past, so I would put the Reds bats ahead of Miami. San Diego taking on the Tigers in Detroit. Keter Montero going for the Tigers, as I alluded to already. Randy Vasquez going for the Padres. Only a $5,500 price tag on Randy Vasquez. I've said it a million times on shows over the years. Anytime you get a starting pitcher that is fully stretched out at a sub 6K price tag, they're technically going to be underpriced. but I also don't think you really need to get to him on this slate. We have him projected for 9 fantasy points, so it's an okay point per dollar projection, but there's plenty of other relatively inexpensive pitchers today that look better than him. He doesn't give you a ton of strikeout upside. Going back to the start of last season, just a 13.5% strikeout percentage. So when I say he doesn't give you a ton, I mean he gives you basically none. 5.15 xFIP is the highest on the slate. I don't think we really need to get there even at the cheap price tag. Montero getting 10% ownership at 6,500. If you need a value SP2, I think he's fine. I certainly would not recommend playing 99% like I somehow have in my lineups right now. The matchup against the Padres is very difficult. This team does not strike out. Now, granted, they are missing Jackson Merrill, so it's not as good a lineup as it normally would be, but still don't think that just blindly jamming in Montero here is the route that I would want to take. Fernando Tatis, at the top of the lineup, Machado hitting third, Bogarts hitting fourth. It's not as good a San Diego lineup as normal. You have Gavin Sheets hitting second, Ornelas, Gonzalez, Iglesias, Wade, Maldonado. Like you have no Arise, so that does increase the strikeout percentages of the lineup overall. Like when you turn Arise into Gavin Sheets, that is a lot of extra strikeouts, but Machado's still tough to strike out. Tatis, obviously a really good hitter. So when it comes to Padres lineups, this is a better matchup than normal for Montero, and maybe that's why he's popping for me. But again, I don't want him in every lineup. I think that's insane. But at 10% ownership, I do think that looks fine. We have him projected right around 13 DraftKings points, so not too far behind Lodolo and Meyer from the previous game at a little bit cheaper price tag. I think as an SP2, he is perfectly fine here. For the bats, the matchup for the Tigers is going to look pretty good. The matchup for the Padres certainly is not bad either. Fernando Tatis getting the most ownership in this game, deservedly so. Tons of power upside, tons of stolen base upside. Since the start of last season, a 192 expected ISO allowed to right-handed hitters for Keter Montero, 171 allowed to lefties. So he does give up some power to both sides of the plate. Doesn't have great strikeout stuff against either side of the plate. Makes Tatis certainly look very good here at 6K. Then you get a drop-off in ownership down to some of the Tigers bats. Zach McKinstry batting second with third base and outfield eligibility at 3,900 is going to look pretty good. Riley Green, plenty of power upside. Spencer Torkelson seemingly has figured out how to hit Major League pitching finally. He's 4,500, facing a pitcher in Vasquez that just does not miss bats. So I like that combination when you have somebody like Torkelson that does have power, but a lot of swings and misses. 19% K percentage against righties for Vasquez, only 7% against lefties. Obviously, Torkelson does not have the platoon advantage here, but it does stand out for Riley Green. 217 expected ISO to lefties to go with that 7% strikeout percentage. The park is not good for hitting home runs, but I do like the power bats in this lineup, specifically the lefties like Riley Green. Manny Machado on the other side going up against Montero is going to look pretty good as well. Overall, I think offensively, this game looks very similar to the Reds-Marlins games in terms of ownership. You have 20% coming into Tatis, 10 to 15% coming into a few other guys, McKinstry, Green, Torkelson, Machado, and then just 5 to 10% pretty much across the board, which is not really surprising on a 10-game slate. I do like this game a little bit better than the Miami game as far as the matchups themselves go. I would certainly rather be taking hitters against Randy Vasquez or Keter Montero than against Nick Lodolo. And I think Max Meyer is better than both pitchers in this game as well from a talent standpoint. So slight edge to this game, I think, as far as, chances of success compared to the first game. Neither park is great for hitting home runs, but I think that there's just a little bit less pitching talent in this San Diego and Detroit game. But overall, I think they look pretty similar. And a lot of games, pretty much every game on the slate looks similar. Every team other than Atlanta has every team other than Atlanta and Toronto has an implied run total between 4 and 4.6. And then Toronto's at 3.9, Atlanta's at 5.1. So pretty much every offense is very, very similar on this slate. Philadelphia taking on the Mets. In New York, Aaron Nola for the Phillies, Tyler McGill for the Mets. Two solid pitching options here. Nola has struggled a bit. Stuff hasn't looked quite as good. Results haven't been great for the most part, but he is also only $8,300. So that is going to offset some of the concerns. You can see here Nola and McGill both projected very similarly, right around 14 fantasy points. McGill is $1,100 less, so I do think I would get to McGill first. The matchup against the Phillies is certainly dangerous. The matchup against the Mets is certainly dangerous. The park does mitigate power a bit, which is nice. Rather get pitchers in this park than in Philly. Granted, Aaron Nola home road splits throughout his career do favor being in Philly, but still, not an ideal matchup for either guy. But 6-game slate where there's not standout pitching. Both of these guys certainly have upside. McGill has a 26% K percentage since the start of last season, 3.68 xFIP. Nola coming in with a 24% K percentage, 3.44 xFIP. So getting to either of them is fine, but I do think that I prefer McGill a little bit, given that he is cheaper and we do have him projected basically the same. Offensively, if you go to these offenses, I think you're basically just banking on the talent of the hitters over, just hoping that they can get it done against two quality pitching options. The highest owned hitters in this game coming in around 12%. Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, the guys that you would expect it to be. I don't mind banking on the talent here. Like I said, Nola hasn't been super impressive so far, and he does give up some power, which is nice, even though this park will downplay it a bit. 130 expected ISO to lefties by McGill last year, 158 to righties. Nola, 126 to righties, 165 to lefties. From a power standpoint, I do think Soto probably looks the best. We do have some concerns, though, with the way that he's been pitched since joining the Mets. He, commented on not getting as many good pitches to hit as he was getting last year with the Yankees, which isn't super surprising. We've seen teams kind of pitch around him a little bit more than they could when he was on the Yankees. So still going to get on base, still going to be a high expected WOBA guy, maybe not the same sort of power numbers because of a combination of getting out of Yankee Stadium and then also teams, as good as Pete Alonso is, teams preferring to pitch to Pete Alonso as opposed to Soto, but still clearly a high upside play. And you have seen the salary come down a little bit as well, coming in at 5,700. So Soto looks fine. No problems with Harper, Alonso, Lindor. Really no issues with either stack. But I wouldn't say that any hitter in particular stands out as a great play. I think this is more so looking at either of these teams as full stacks and liking that just based on how much talent they have. And the idea that, if McGill doesn't have his best stuff or Nola doesn't have his best stuff, then either offense is certainly capable of making them pay. And at that point, you would just want as many hitters from that lineup as you can get, as opposed to grabbing like one individual hitter and saying this guy's likely to have a huge game, given that, if McGill has his best stuff or Nola has his best stuff, it's not an ideal matchup for any of them. The park's not great for hitting home runs, so that's not to say that you can't have like a Juan Soto one-off or a Bryce Harper one-off. Obviously, that's fine. But as far as singling out what I would want from this game, I do think I slightly prefer stacking here to grabbing one-offs. St. Louis taking on Atlanta in Atlanta. This is the best park we've had so far for hitting home runs. For the Cardinals, we have Eric Fetty. For the Braves, we have Spencer Schwellenbach. Schwellenbach is our highest projected pitcher on the slate by about 1.5 over Robbie Ray. So if you can get to him, great. He is expensive at $9,500. He is $500 more than any other pitcher on the slate. So you do have to keep that in mind, but he does have the highest projection by a pretty wide margin. Very, very good pitcher. Very good slider. That's graded out so far this year as one of the best pitches in all of baseball. 25% K percentage going back to last year, just shy of a 5% walk percentage, 3.29 xFIP, getting 30% ownership. I think Schwellenbach looks very good. As I said at the top of the show, he somehow isn't in any of the lineups I built right now, but that is not how I plan on actually attacking this slate. I certainly want to be getting to Schwellenbach. The matchup here against the Cards is perfectly fine. One of the lower implied run totals on the slate. Against right-handed pitching since the start of last season, they rank, where'd they go? 23rd in strikeout percentage at 20.8%, 104 WRC plus. But it's really just not the scariest lineup. They have kind of underperformed for, it seems like, years. So I do like just the talent of Schwellenbach, all of that. Not really interested in Fetty on the other side. One of the more difficult matchups on the slate. Braves have the highest implied run total on the slate. Fetty is an okay pitcher. Like, he's not a total gas can, but I don't think you really need him much today. He has held righties to a 127 expected ISO since last year. Lefties have done a bit more damage with a 177 expected ISO. I think that points to, Matt Olson, Michael Harris, Alex Verdugo from the left side, but still certainly can get to some Austin Riley, some Sean Murphy. Those guys have plenty of power, even though the platoon advantage is not in their favor. We actually do have the highest projection on Riley. Still have a very high home run projection on him as well. I think he's been barreling the ball very well to start the season, putting really good swings on the ball, making quality contact. 5K price tag's pretty reasonable. So even without the platoon advantage, we do like Austin Riley a lot as far as power upside here. Harris looks solid. Olsen looks solid. So the Braves do look like a pretty good stack overall. Verdugo's getting the most ownership because he is cheap. 3,300 leading off. Very good point per dollar play. Not as much upside, obviously, as a lot of outfield bats. So I do think that, maybe stacking the Braves without Verdugo is an interesting approach, given that such a high percentage of Brave stacks are going to have Verdugo, and he obviously is capable of having a good game, but you're a lot less likely to get, a 2 home run game from Verdugo that you can't make up for than you are pretty much any other hitter, at least in the middle or top of the Braves lineup. So something like, Riley, Olsen, Ozuna, Murphy, Albies, or Harris, even though it's not going to be contrarian in the sense of like nobody's playing it, it is going to be a little bit different from a combinatorial standpoint because such a high percentage of Brave stacks are going to use a $3,300 Verdugo to be able to afford 4 expensive Braves. So, maybe instead you don't go Verdugo value, you pay down to like Max Meyer, you pay down to Montero, something like that, and then you just play 5 of the more expensive Braves bats, and you'll be a little bit different that way, which is nice and still have plenty of upside here against Eric Fetty. On the other side, not super interested in getting to the Cards against Schwellenbach. He's only projected for about 30% ownership. So even on a 6-game slate, like there is negative correlation. Obviously, if the Cardinals do well, Schwellenbach, 30% of the field is falling off, but it's not like you're getting 50, 60% projected ownership coming into him. So it's not a huge spot to be targeting against him. He is just a very good pitcher. So not nearly as interested in the Cards bats as I am in the Atlanta bats. Since the start of last season, 165 expected ISO to lefties, 109 to righties. If you are going to target against him, I do think you go to left-handed bats. His strikeout percentage is about 7 points lower against lefties, 22% compared to 29%. 165 expected ISO, like I said, compared to 109. So, you can full stack against him if you want to and just hope that 30% owned pitcher gets blown up. But if you were to try and single out individual bats, I think you're looking at like Nootbaar, Donovan, Burleson, Gorman as your left-handed power bats. You have Victor Scott in there as well, batting 9th. Plenty of stolen base upside if he gets on, but not a ton of power there. As far as home run projections go, our highest one for the Cardinals is Nolan Gorman at 0.14. Nootbaar behind that. So it is the left-handed power, like I said, showing up at the top, even though it's clearly not nearly as good a spot as for Atlanta. And again, this is one of the things that I do really like about our projections is that you can see the detailed projections. You can see exactly how players did in our sims on the back end. And you can use that. You can use it in your decision-making process. If you're somebody that's hand-building lineups, only playing a few, and you are manually making your 1v1 or 2v2 decisions, you can look and say, okay, well, the median projection is similar for these two guys, but this guy has more home run upside. This guy has more stolen base upside, whatever it is. You can also, if you look at a pitcher's projection and say, that seems off to me, I don't think I agree with that. Instead of having to just kind of make that determination, like I don't like that number, you can see what he's projected for as far as strikeouts go. You can see how many batters he's projected to face. You can see how many innings he's projected to pitch. So you can, make more informed decisions on whether or not you agree or disagree with projections. You can make more informed decisions on what players exactly you want in your lineup. So that is something that I really like about our projections. And ultimately, they will be powering our props tool as well. We haven't built that out quite yet, but it will be built out sooner than later. And so that will be driven by these projections as well. In the meantime, obviously, you can use them for your own prop betting. But while you wait for us to build something out, Toronto taking on the Astros in Houston. Hunter Brown going for the Astros. Good pitcher. A little disappointing as far as strikeout stuff goes, but good pitcher overall. Kevin Gossman going for the Blue Jays. Tough matchup for both guys. Tough matchup for both offenses. So this is one of those spots that, from a median projection standpoint, can be kind of difficult to get to because the Blue Jays really do not strike out. They're one of the most difficult offenses in baseball to strike out. They actually have the lowest strikeout percentage on their active roster against right-handed pitching, going back to the start of last season at just 15.9% to go along with a 111 WRC+. Houston has the 5th lowest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching at 19.7% with a 102 WRC+. So very, very tough spot here. But then you also have two talented pitchers where, we did see Gossman drop off a bit last year, 21.5% K percentage, 4.18 xFIP. He made some changes in the offseason, supposedly. Stuff has, I think, been grading out a little bit better so far this season. Certainly has had at least one huge strikeout game. I think he's had a couple good games. So at 8K, not a great matchup, but certainly not any worse than most of the other pitchers on this slate. He's getting 13 to 14% ownership. I think that looks fine. We actually have him projected a little bit better than Brown, who is $1,000 more and getting more ownership. And this is just being driven by the strikeout matchup against the Blue Jays, how difficult that matchup is. Brown has a 25% K percentage going back to last season. That's a little bit lower than you would expect for somebody that has the stuff that he has, but it's still obviously solid. 26.9% to lefties, 23% to righties. So that's something else to keep in mind, is that you do actually have reverse splits as far as strikeouts go for him. And I think that has to do with not getting a lot of swings and misses on most of the stuff that he throws to righties. He throws his sinker 36% of the time, only has a 7% swinging strike percentage there, throws his fastball 27% of the time, does have a relatively high 14% swinging strike percentage on that. But you're just looking at somebody that throws a lot of fastballs to right-handed hitters, and generally that's not where you're going to get your swings and misses from. He throws his changeup 20% of the time to lefties, fastball 42%. So you just have a little bit more swing and miss in the stuff that he throws to lefties than he throws to righties. If you take a look at the Blue Jays projected lineup here, I don't think we have their, we did get their confirmed lineup. You have predominantly a right-handed lineup that is also difficult to strike out. Bichette, Guerrero, 1-2 from the right side. Santander will hit left-handed. Springer from the right side, batting fourth. Jimenez, left-handed, batting fifth. Then you get two more righties with Kirk and Clement. Alan Rodin hitting from the left side, batting eighth. And then Miles Straw, who is right-handed but will strike out and is just not a very good hitter at all, batting ninth. But the top of this order, righty-heavy, tough to strike out. So again, Brown is good. He does have upside, but I do think that the 23% ownership projection is a little bit higher on him than I would like. Like if I'm paying up, I would rather get the Schwellenbach. I'd rather turn some more. Like if Schwellenbach's going to be 30% and Brown's going to be 23, I would like to turn some of that Hunter Brown into either more Schwellenbach or just saving some money going down to some of these other cheaper pitchers. So not a knock on Brown from a talent standpoint, but it is a really brutal strikeout matchup here against Toronto. Offensively, not going to love either of these offenses, but Yordan Alvarez does stand out at only $5,100 from an upside versus salary standpoint. Like he's just too good of a hitter to only be $5,100. So that does stand out, even though Brown, like I said, has struck lefties out, or sorry, he has the matchup against Gausman. Gausman, going back to last season, has given up a lot of power. 198 expected ISO to lefties, 20% strikeout percentage. Even this year, 18.8% K percentage to lefties. Very, very small sample. 221 expected ISO. So Alvarez does stand out here. The Blue Jays in general or the Astros in general, rather, do look better than the Blue Jays against Gausman. Just more question marks at this point, I think, in Kevin Gausman's talent level than there is in Hunter Brown's. So I would want to get to the Astros side first. Not a lot of ownership coming into them either. 13% projected for Alvarez, 12% for Diaz. Those are the only two guys in double-digit ownership for the Astros. So I do also like that. And then obligatory mention that Isaac Paredes is hitting in Houston and that this ballpark was built for Isaac Paredes to hit home runs. I don't know that there's ever been a more perfect acquisition in an offseason than the Astros going out and just getting a guy that hits nothing but pulled fly balls down the left field line to play in a park that randomly has just a very short porch in left field for him to hit fly balls into. So anytime Paredes is in this park, I'm going to think that is appealing, especially when he's sub 10% owned here. 4,100 batting third, so he gets a shout out there. But I do like the Astros side more than the Blue Jays side, just based on talent level. But in large field tournaments, if you're not getting to Brown because of the lack of strikeout upside, it's obviously not the craziest thing to be getting some Vladdy or some Santander or some Bichette. But I do like the Astros in general. Yordan Alvarez, my favorite play from this game. I do like Paredes again individually as well. And then wrapping things up with Milwaukee taking on San Francisco. Einsteinium all over Quinn Priester here. Don't know how or why, but he will be by himself. 3.8 to 4, so 4% projected ownership coming in right now to Quinn Priester, 6,600. It's a great park to pitch in. The Giants still have a 4.6 implied run total here, which is the second highest on the slate, despite playing in San Francisco. But they will probably get some ownership. If you want to go to Priester, fine. Robbie Ray, though, I think is clearly the pitching priority here. $7,500 is just a crazy price tag for him. Good strikeout pitcher. Like, we know everything that comes with Robbie Ray as far as the negatives go. He walks too many guys. He gives up power. But he's $7,500. Like that stuff is all just mitigated when you make the guy that has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate $7,500. He has struck out 30% of the batters he's faced going back to last season. He also does have a 4.55 xFIP, 1.8 home runs allowed per nine, 14% walk percentage. All of that stuff sucks. This park does downplay home runs, which is nice. But it's really just the strikeout upside giving you at least some safety net here. And then obviously a very high ceiling as well. Also, when you're striking out 30% of hitters and you're walking 15%, you are not going to be very pitch efficient. It's going to be difficult for you to work deep into games. You can see that here, shy 15, basically a 5-inning projection, little north of 5 innings for Robbie Ray, 22 and a half batters faced, but only projected to, get 15 outs. So that is reflected here. But again, you just have a good strikeout projection for this salary. And then also, in the context of this slate where pitching is not great in general, and then, you take one of the best pitchers in Hunter Brown, you put him up against the Blue Jays for $1,500 more. It's just going to make Robbie Ray look very, very good. So Quinn Priester, if you want a contrarian play that's cheap, sure. He's getting like half the ownership probably of Keter Montero. Range of outcomes is not very different. Robbie Ray, though, I think is the priority. He's getting 28% ownership, and I don't have any issue with that. Like I said at the top of the show, he would, if the slate started right now, I guess being 100% of my lineups, but that's not actually what I intend on happening. But I do think he's a priority for me. Offensively, this park is tough for hitting home runs, but you do have plenty of upside combined with between Robbie Ray giving up 1.8 home runs per 9 innings since the start of last year, and then Quinn Priester being somebody that only has a 14.5% K percentage, 1.5 home runs allowed per 9 for him, 4.2 xFIP there, which is actually better than Robbie Ray's over that time. There is power upside here, even though the park does help to mitigate power. Home run wise, we have the highest home run projection here on Jackson Chourio, Rhys Hoskins behind him. So that right-handed power against Robbie Ray is actually grading out the best as far as home runs go here. 164 expected ISO allowed to righties since the start of last season. 322 to lefties in a very limited sample. If you go back to 2023, 161 expected ISO to righties. So right-handed power against him, does look good. Contreras looks pretty solid as well. He's getting the most ownership in this game at 18%. Then you start getting to some of the Giants bats, which are relatively inexpensive, priced between like 4K and 4,800. Yastrzemski, Lee, Chapman, Adames, all getting 10 to 15% ownership against Priester since the start of last season. Priester has held righties to a 135 expected ISO with a 22% strikeout percentage. Lefties have been the problem from a strikeout standpoint, only a 9% K percentage. Still holding them to a 159 expected ISO, though. When he's on, he does a good job keeping the ball on the ground. Heavy sinker usage, relies on a changeup and curveball to lefties as well. So also keep an eye on exactly what lineup the Giants run out there. If for some reason they go with a more right-handed heavy lineup, that would actually be a nice bump for Quinn Priester as far as strikeouts go. They're more likely to be running a pretty balanced lineup that skews lefty heavy at the top, likely to have Yastrzemski, Lee, or I guess just kind of balanced, but more balanced at the top. 5 righties, 4 lefties in their projected lineup. 3 of those lefties in the top 6 with Yastrzemski, Lee, and Wade. So I don't think it's a horrible spot for Priester. I'm not gonna rag on Einsteinium too much. Like of the unowned pitchers, I think I would rather go to Priester than Fedde or Vasquez. Those are like the 3 guys getting sub 10% ownership. I think Priester would be my preferred option of those 3. I don't think that he's super necessary, but if I am going that route, going to low-owned pitching, Priester would be the one that I wanted to get to, I think. A combination of Park and then I think the matchup being a little bit better and him probably just being a little bit better pitcher than the alternatives. But I think this is a game where mostly I would expect to be getting to Robbie Ray and then either of the offenses. So to recap, again, I don't have my own exposures, but I think the pitching priorities today are Schwellenbach, Ray, and then a little bit of a step back to like Nick Lodolo, Nola, McGill, Meyer. Hunter Brown getting some ownership. We at Run the Sims are not as high on him given the matchup. I agree with the projection there. I think it's a very, very tough strikeout spot for him, but he is a good pitcher. So, on the slate, he deserves some consideration as well. Offensively, left-handed Reds bats against Meyer look pretty good. I like left-handed Tigers bats against Vasquez. I don't mind stacking either side of the Mets game just because it's two talented offenses at pretty low ownership. Mets against Braves against Fetty look good. I like the Astros a lot, despite the low implied run total. I think they have a lot of home run upside against Gossman. It's a kind of just a big boom bust spot where if Gossman's at the top of his game, he's still very, very difficult to hit. But when he's not, he doesn't have a huge margin for error, and he does give up a lot of power. We know that the Astros have a lot of power. So I do like the Astros bats, Alvarez and Paredes in particular. Ken Rady said Montero is popular. No, he's getting like 10% ownership. He's just 2x Priester because Priester's getting like 4 or 5. Play McGill since I'm playing Philly. Yeah, I mean, I think both sides of that are fine. How are the Brew Crew base running this year if Ray doesn't have his command today? I mean, you have stolen base upside with Chourio in particular. I can pull their hitting projections back up here. If we look at stolen base projections, very high stolen base projection on Chourio. Pretty good stolen base projection here for Frelick. Turang will run. He is projected to hit at the bottom of the order, which does hurt your stolen base upside. It's just more likely guys are on base ahead of you. So that's why we have the highest projection on Chourio, is that he's going to get the most opportunities. Like, he's guaranteed at least one opportunity to get on base with nobody ahead of him. But you do have stolen base upside here for the Brewers, a lot of it. So you have power upside, you have stolen base upside. The stolen base upside is nice too when you talk about facing somebody like Robbie Ray. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because like when you think about where DFS upside comes from, it obviously comes from home runs, with which Ray does give those up, but this park is not ideal for hitting them. But when you stack against somebody like Robbie Ray, you are running the risk of that really frustrating start where it's just like the bases are always loaded, but it's just like walks on top of walks, and then your guys make outs. And so you didn't really accumulate any fantasy points. But for a team like Milwaukee that does have a lot of guys that will run, he or they, if Ray is walking them, you do get some added upside there because they can look to run against Ray. So glad you pointed that out. I think that's a good thing to point out, that you do have really high stolen base projections for a lot of this lineup. So that's all I have for this one. Only 6 games today. Thank you for checking out the show. Don't forget to join runthesims.com using the link in the description below. If you have not joined Endgame Syndicate, that link is in the description as well. Utikow and I did just put out a video a couple days ago talking about NBA postseason. Some of the stuff we talked about in that has already come to fruition, with guys like Aaron Gordon playing big minutes, Naz Reid playing big minutes in their first games. So hopefully you guys already saw that. If you haven't, and you are a sub, check it out. If you're not a sub, that link is in the description as well. Thanks for checking out the show. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back again tomorrow.